Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now this week we need to tick off yet another autumn or fall job from our to-do list. So this week we're going to be lifting and storing our caladiums. Now caladiums are native to South America and they're grown mainly for their foliage. They've got four basic colours, which is white, green, red and pink. But it's the combination of those colours that makes them so spectacular. Now if say you want to choose the red-green variety, just have a look at some of the photographs here on the screen. They can go from almost a red to almost a green and then anything in between that. And again, if you choose say the white variety, we've got from the very ghostly white, like something like Florida Moonlight, right up until green ones with just a tiny little bit of white in between. Absolutely spectacular, and certainly there's room for them in anybody's garden. They've only got one problem: they are definitely not cold tolerant. They're winter hardy to zone 9 and above. Now I garden in a zone 6, so gloves, fork, and let's get going. When is the right time to lift them? Well, as a rule of thumb, when the air temperature is consistently below 15 degrees Celsius, which is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. This variety is called Florida Moonlight. It's almost completely white and there's just a little tiny little border of green around it. Now as you can see, this plant is already going floppy. So it needs to be lifted right now. You wouldn't wait until all of them are brown and dead like this one, because that would mean that the tuber is already suffering and certainly would not make a good candidate for storage over winter. Always wear gloves when you're handling caladiums, because some people, not all, have a reaction to handling either the plant or the tuber itself. Now remember, my tubers or my actual plants are very small because I planted them really late last year and they haven't had time to bulk out. However, I do need to lift them because they are going to get damaged by the cold. Now, you don't pull the leaves off. You have to lift the entire plant. That's not particularly difficult because the plant, the actual tubers themselves, are not very deep, probably about 2 inches underneath the surface. However, I'm going to use a garden fork just to be on the safe side because the tines are separated and there's less chance of damaging a tuber with a fork than with a spade. Now the plant is about here, so I'm just going to pull back just to make sure that I don't get hold of one of the roots of the plant. See, that's coming up nice and easily now. There we go, nice and easy. Just slide underneath that. Now to go in with my hands, just loosen up the soil. Right. Now you see it's got some of the soil stuck to it, so just very gently, just knock off that loose soil with your hands. And expose the actual tubers themselves. So there you have it. Now I have the Florida Moonlight tubers here in my hand, and it's at this very point that some of the techniques differ. Some people like to get a really strong hosepipe jet and get every bit of soil they can off the tubers. Now I don't like that method, mainly because if I'm going to try and dry them out, I don't want to be wetting them. It seems to be contradictory. Now the next stage in the process is drying them out, because you can't store them in the present condition. There's too much moisture in it. So I dry them out in a cool, dark place, laid out on a newspaper, and when that period is over, then I top and tail them. Some people prefer to top and tail them before that stage. They're just different techniques. Now the area you choose to dry them out in shouldn't ever drop below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 5 degrees centigrade. How long do you leave them? I like to leave a 2-week period, but that's not written in stone. After that 2-week period, just have a little eye, because if it looks dry and it feels dry, then it probably is dry. However, if it still looks a bit wet and moist, both to the eyes and to the touch, well then just leave it an extra week. Now I need to jump very quickly to the end of the garden and lift the other variety I have, which is Red Flash. Now, when you're actually drying them, do put a little bit of paper with each variety, because at this stage it's very easy to tell which is my Florida Moonlight and which is my Red Flash. But by the time all these leaves are dry and brown, it's very difficult to tell the difference between the two of them. And definitely when you remove the leaves, it's going to be even more difficult. So always name your varieties. I've just emptied a little space here. This is the area in the storage room where I store my Halloween things, my Christmas lights, my Christmas decorations, etc. And my Christmas tree there is up on the top. So it's a perfect place to store it, out of reach of little fingers and little dogs. We also store the dog food here, and the dogs are pretty hungry, as you can see. They're already lining up for dinner, and it is lunchtime, so we'll just give them something before we continue. So as you can see, I've just placed them here on the newspaper, spread them out so they're not touching. The next thing is to label them. Front row is Red Flash, and the row behind is Florida Moonlight. All I've got to do now is sit back patiently and wait those 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks, as I said before, give a quick eyeball to see how they're getting on. If they're ready, they're ready. And if they're not, well, another week. Ooh. Remember also to put a calendar alert either written or in your telephone, because you've got so much going on all at the same time, particularly in autumn, that it's a great help to have something go ting-a-ling. Don't forget to have a look at your caladiums. Exactly 2 weeks have gone by since I put them out to dry. Now if we have a look at the Florida Moonlight first, which are the white ones, just listen to this. The leaves sound like paper and they feel like paper. They're totally dry. And all I want to do now is just remove the last remaining soil, and they'll be ready now for storage. This is the stage now that I just top and tail them. Well, top them. Just hold the tuber, snip it off, and we'll leave them ready. So these tubers are now ready for storage. However, if we have a look at the Red Flash, this first one is definitely ready for storage. But although the root on the second one looks and feels pretty dry, I'm still getting fresh growth up here. Well, not fresh growth, but certainly live growth up here. So I'm just going to leave this one a little bit longer. So what do you store them in? My recommendation is that when you do receive a box with live plants or bulbs that have got these pre-installed aeration holes, put them away, flat pack them, put them away and keep them. And also keep the package the bulbs arrived in. Now these packages are paper bags, fantastic, and you can see up the sides here, they've got aeration holes, so perfect for storing. And then you can fill them with whatever medium you want, perlite, vermiculite, shredded paper, whatever takes your fancy, put it in and that'll keep the bulbs nice and separate and nice and dry until next spring. So the first thing I'm going to do here is flatten it out a bit and write the name, Florida Moonlight. Another reason why it's handy to use paper bags. Now the medium I'm going to be using today is vermiculite. Why do I like vermiculite? It's so light. But you can use shredded paper, you can use perlite, you can use peat moss. I personally prefer not to use peat moss, but if you have it in the house, it's up to you. If I was storing directly into the box, I'd be putting a layer of vermiculite, then I'd be spreading out the tubers or the corms or the bulbs, whatever you're storing, separately to make sure they don't touch, and then I'd be covering it with another layer. But I'm going to be storing them in little paper bags, so it's virtually going to be the same. I'm going to be putting a layer of vermiculite, some bulbs or tubers, another layer, some more, another layer, some more, until it's full. And then I'm going to be putting it in this box and storing it away. So that's the Florida Moonlight put to bed for the winter. Now I just need to fold it down. It's got its name. I'm just going to fold it down now. It's got its name and it's going to go into its little beddy buys for the winter. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for the Red Flash tuber that's ready for storage. The other one I've put back in the basement, the darker basement. to dry out some more. Now, in about a week's time, when the other tuber is ready, I'll just pop it in here, put some more vermiculite on top, and then seal it down again. Well, that's my caladiums now stored until next spring. So next spring, when do I know when to plant them out? As a rule of thumb, you plant them out from the soil temperature, not the air temperature, when the soil temperature is above 60 degrees. So how will I know when the soil temperature is above 60 degrees? Well, if you're nice and modern, you can get one of these lovely knitting needle type thermometers with a digital reading on top, and you just stick it into the soil as if you were sticking it into your Sunday roast, and get the soil temperature from there. Or if you're old school like me, you wait until the first lilacs bloom. I hope you've enjoyed watching and have learned something from it, or certainly have inspired you to try and store your things as opposed to getting new ones every year. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next Friday here with me in Granny's Garden. Bye bye now.